Welcome to Timeline Engine Podcast. Listen now.
We're jumping directly into a simulation today,
Right.
a thought experiment.
Yeah.
The sources call it the Timeline Engine.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission for this deep dive is, well, it's pretty straightforward, but the results can be a little devastating.
They can.
We're tracking the long-term consequences of just one single, really common assumption.
The belief that I have time.
Exactly. I have time.
It's an engine that's basically designed to model the decay curve of potential. I mean, it strips away all of the external stuff.
So no lottery wins, no sudden disasters.
None of that. It just isolates that one belief. How does simply assuming you have time in the future, how does that affect what you do today? And, what does that look like years down the line?
Okay, so let's unpack the setup before we hit start on this thing. What are the baseline conditions? Because this is really designed for you, the listener, starting from a place that feels completely normal.
That's it, exactly. The initial subject is, it's calibrated to be highly relatable. We're looking at someone in their early 20s. Health is stable, the baseline's good. Ambition is definitely present. They have goals. But, and this is crucial, it's inconsistent.
So they're not failing.
Not at all. They're just existing, with the full promise of the future still ahead of them.
And what's the key behavior? The critical input that kicks off these three different futures?
It's a daily pattern defined by really high consumption.
Of media, things like that?
Media, information, social feeds, and at the same time, consistently low execution on their core goals. But the main psychological trigger, the real trap, is this.
Yeah.
The subject is always waiting to feel ready or for the perfect moment before they start any real uncomfortable work.
And the engine has a strict rule here.
A very strict rule. Once the simulation starts, there are, and I'm quoting, no warnings, only outcomes.
That's at a chilling stage. Okay, let's look at the first projection. The engine calls this one timeline A, comfort preservation.
What's so insidious about Timeline A is how functional it looks for the first couple of years.
Nothing seems wrong.
Nothing at all. The subject's main goal is just avoiding discomfort, and they get really, really good at it.
Which looks like what?
A flexible sleep schedule, low demand, filling empty hours with entertainment, mostly passive stuff.
I think the most dangerous part here is the self-talk, the rationalization. The source material points out that productivity is always postponed, but it's never actually abandoned in their mind.
Right. They justify it perfectly.
I'm just managing stress, or I'm recovering from a hard week.
Or even framing it as being responsible, as if resting is the disciplined choice.
And because there's no big crisis, the lack of progress is kind of masked.
It is. If you track the indicators, they're minimal, but they're not alarming. The first quiet sign of trouble comes around year 3. Their peers start to specialize. They're gaining real marketable skills. They're finding a focus.
And our subject
Remains a generalist, capable of many things, but a master of none.
We tend to think procrastination leads to some big, spectacular flameout. You miss a deadline, you get fired.
But the engine shows that's often not the case. The outcome is much quieter, more stable.
It's stabilization, not collapse.
That's it. The timeline finds an equilibrium. It's based on the minimum effective effort. Just enough to stay functional, but never enough to actually advance. That's the cost of all that comfort.
So let's define that cost. By year 5, what does functional and replaceable really mean for you, the listener?
It means stability has become a cage. You might have job security, but you are not indispensable.
You can do the basics.
You can do the basics of your role, sure, but you haven't developed that unique, high-value skill set, the kind that takes consistent discomfort to build. You're managing, but you're definitely not leading. You're not innovating.
And the life they wanted
Yeah.
is just filed away indefinitely.
Exactly. Ambition in this timeline survives only as a nostalgia.
Nostalgia.
Yeah. They talk about the big plans they had or the changes they will make someday, but they're trapped. Trapped by the very comfort they worked so hard to preserve.
That is such a critical point for anyone just starting out. Stability is not the same as progress. Okay, let's switch gears. We're introducing a slight variable now, and that moves us to Timeline B, slow erosion.
Right.
The starting conditions are identical to Timeline A, but the sources point to one critical difference, something called internal friction.
And that internal friction it's really just guilt. or awareness.
So they notice.
They notice the wasted time, which the subject in Timeline A successfully ignored. But instead of turning that guilt into action, they build this complex mental shield. It's all designed to protect their comfort.
And they start rationalizing. I work better under pressure.
That's a classic. Or I just need a deadline. Or my favorite, other people are just lucky their path was easier.
This is where the behavior really shifts.
Yeah.
To deal with the guilt, the subject starts consuming motivational content. Self-help books, productivity videos, maybe even this deep dive.
Right. But the reason they're consuming it is what defines this timeline.
It's not to act.
No. The engine is very clear on this. The consumption is done specifically to relieve guilt. The feeling of preparing or planning, it becomes a substitute for the feeling of actually doing.
It's like a mental payment to delay the work.
You feel productive because you're learning about productivity.
So you're making inaction payments. And the cost of that delay, the interest, starts to compound fast.
Absolutely. By year 4, you can see their confidence and energy are noticeably lower. The subject starts to mistake their own internal resistance for, bad timing or external problems.
They don't see that the problem is inside.
No, they see obstacles everywhere else.
The sources talk about a breaking moment at year 7. Can you walk us through why effort suddenly costs so much more? It's not just about willpower at this point, is it?
No, not at all. Think of effort like compound interest, but in reverse. For 7 years, they didn't just stand still, they were building inertia against starting.
Okay.
So now, when they try to summon that high-intensity effort, the cost is threefold.
What are those 3 costs?
First, learning is slower. The brain's neuroplasticity, it's always there, but it's less responsive to new, hard things than it was in your 20s.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, recovery is harder. Physically, mentally, it just takes longer to bounce back. The feeling of needing a weekend to recover now takes a whole week. And third,
The risk.
the risk feels astronomically heavier. They've spent years building up responsibilities, comforts, a mortgage, a stable life. The idea of risking all that for some uncertain goal, it feels like a huge potential loss.
So that belief, I have time, it hasn't gone away, but it's warped.
It has. It sounds purely defensive now.
Right.
The subject is fighting the gravitational pull of their own past. Timeline B doesn't end in some big failure. It ends in quiet, grinding regret. They haven't quit, but the price of admission for every single one of their ambitions has just become too high.
That's a huge warning. The goalposts don't just stay put, they move further away every year you put off the work. Let's move to our third and final scenario. The engine calls this one timeline C, late panic. This timeline starts like the others. Years 1 and 2, they just drift by. But the sources say that by year 3, time dramatically accelerates.
Well, time doesn't actually speed up, of course.
It's the perception.
It's the perception of time that accelerates, and it's because all the unmade decisions are compounding. Think of it like a logistical nightmare. Every choice you delayed, career, skills, relationships, it all piles up.
So when you finally look up,
The gap between where you are and where you thought you'd be is immense. It makes the journey feel impossibly fast, impossibly daunting.
the chaos isn't external. It's the weight of all these unaddressed choices.
Yeah.
What's the trigger that finally pushes the subject out of that comfortable delay?
In Timeline C, the trigger is sharp, it's sudden, it's comparison. Specifically, seeing someone younger, or maybe someone you thought was less talented, achieve something significant, a promotion, a success, something you wanted. That external event creates immediate, high-intensity panic.
And the reaction is aggressive.
Very. The goals become massive, the expectations totally unrealistic. They try to bridge that huge gap instantly, and we have to look at the fatal flaw in this approach.
They're confusing 2 different things.
They mistake urgency for discipline. They're trying to run a marathon at a full sprint. The emotional pressure is so high they go all out, but they don't have the trained capacity, the habits to sustain it.
They're trying to build a career's worth of skill in 3 months.
Using the energy reserves of one panicked week.
And the outcome of mixing urgency with a lack of strategy is, predictably, burnout, often catastrophic.
Exactly. The momentum just collapses, and they often end up worse off than before the panic even started.
Why worse off?
Because now they've successfully trained their brain that high-intensity effort leads to pain, to failure, to collapse. It creates a new negative feedback loop. Effort hurts, so stop.
So for you, the listener, the lesson from Timeline C isn't just that panic is bad, it's that reacting with aggression instead of a smart, measured strategy is the fatal mistake.
Right. By year 10, they might still be putting in effort, but the direction is just, it's gone. It's muddled. They've tried and failed so many times that now they just associate action with failure.
And the original belief,
I have time, is gone. It's been replaced by this bitter, self-punishing judgment. I should have started when the cost was low.
So after running all 3 timelines, A, B, and C, which all came from the exact same starting point, the same belief, what did the engine's final output say was the common error?
The finding is just, it's brutal because it's so mundane.
And is it?
All 3 timelines started in the exact same way, and none of them began with what looked like failure. Critically, none of them felt dangerous.
That moment of comfortable delay never set off any alarms.
The danger wasn't a cliff you fall off. It was the quiet stabilization, the total lack of friction right at the beginning.
So the belief itself wasn't the problem.
No, because I have time was never technically false. Time did exist. The real crippling consequence, the one we saw across all 3 timelines, is that time. Well, time did not wait.
It didn't wait for you to be ready.
It just advanced. And with every passing day, it raised the cost of entry, the cost of effort for every single meaningful thing the subject wanted to do.
So if we synthesize all of this, what this deep dive really shows us is that the danger of procrastination, it's not the big, spectacular collapse we all worry about.
No, it's the guaranteed silent narrowing of your future. It's the slow stabilization of timeline A, the quiet erosion of B, or the burnout of C. They all come from the same place. Consistently postponing effort to avoid a little bit of discomfort now.
And that price of delay gets paid back later with interest. A lot of interest.
An exponentially more expensive effort. Yeah.
It's such a perfect connection between effort and finance. The earlier you pay the debt, the less you owe. Thank you for walking us through the mechanics of this.
Of course. And here's a final thought for you to take away, something pulled directly from the stability of timeline A. If the beginning of that comfortable delay never feels dangerous, how do you distinguish in your own daily actions between genuine patience, wise rest, and just the efficient preservation of comfort? Knowing that one kind of stability can quietly turn you into someone who is just functional and replaceable. That distinction, that might just define the rest of your life.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more AI and psychology insight.